Well, in a bid to battle the latest strain of the coronavirus pandemic, British MPs have voted in favour of imposing new restrictions in parts of the UK. But it wasn't an easy night for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson as he faced the largest ever rebellion from within his own party, putting him under further pressure. 99 Conservative lawmakers voted against the new measures, but despite the squabble, the policy still passed with help from votes from the opposition party Labour, 269 votes to 126. But the authority of the British Prime Minister Johnson is under scrutiny. His approval ratings, both with voters and inside the Conservative Party, have plummeted amid a string of claims of parties being held inside Downing Street when lockdown restrictions were in place. The latest measures being introduced include ordering people to wear masks in public places and using COVID-19 passes to enter some venues, including nightclubs and large sporting events. The latest curbs come at a time when the country's Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has warned of a surge in coronavirus-related deaths in the UK due to the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. He further said that the variant now accounts for 44% of all COVID infections in London. The Health and Security Agency of the UK has also predicted that the true figure of those already infected in Britain could be as high as 200,000 a day. As of now, there are 5,346 confirmed cases of the Omicron variant in the country. It comes a few days after British Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned that the latest Omicron variant could overcome the immunity of those already inoculated. People have been queuing to get a third booster shot amid a scramble to get appointments.
We have been checking the website for a few weeks to make sure, to see if we could get an appointment, but as soon as it opened for the under 40s we went for it and booked the first appointment at the first place we could find. But it seems like there's a real scramble at the moment. There really aren't any appointments available, and we've been checking to see if there's anywhere else.
Well, meanwhile, the British government has announced that it will remove all 11 countries from its COVID-19 travel red list. However, Britain will still require all inbound travellers to take PCR tests 48 hours before their departure. As of now, the latest COVID-19 strain, Omicron, is present in 77 countries.
The ayes to the right, 441. The noes to the left, 41.
Well, there's pressure on Boris Johnson at the moment. Of course, he'll face Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, later at Prime Minister's questions. Keir Starmer has already said that Boris Johnson's status as leader of the British government is in question now. His authority, he says, has been damaged, of course, after 99 Conservative MPs voted against his plans to introduce those Plan B measures, as the government calls it. This surge in Omicron variant in the United Kingdom and a massive increase in the number of coronavirus infections in the country has put greater pressure on the National Health Service here. People have been queuing to get their third booster shot. That, the government says, will be the way to try to defend against serious illness from the disease. Just yesterday, the government decided to lift a recommended 15-minute wait post having that third booster shot and other injections, sheerly just to basically bring in extra people and get more doses into the arms of the British public. But they're hoping that that could be the best defence against it. Well, Benji Hire, our WION correspondent in London, joins us now. Benji, just how severely affected is Boris Johnson's authority right now?
Laura, Number 10's reputation has been battered and bruised in recent weeks. You just have to cast your mind back to 2 years ago when Boris Johnson won the Conservatives' biggest majority in Parliament since Margaret Thatcher back in the 80s. But a lot has changed in recent weeks. In the past 24 hours alone, he's faced his biggest defeat in the House of Commons as Prime Minister, and the largest that a Tory Prime Minister has faced. Even bigger, not almost as big, I should say, as the one that Theresa May faced when she was Prime Minister during that Brexit saga. The big issue for Boris Johnson is that these rebels have come from all factions of his party. This isn't just one element of the Conservatives. We're talking dozens of MPs, veterans, Brexiteers, Remainers, even new entries. One MP who became a Member of Parliament just 12 days ago, deciding to go against their party. And that is of significant concern for Boris Johnson, even though on paper he has a considerable majority in Parliament. And another great threat, you could say, to his authority, to his reputation, to his future is the fact that the measures that were put in place and voted through on Tuesday evening only passed because of the help of the opposition Labour Party, who now hold a greater amount of leverage. In effect, if Boris Johnson wants to try to get through further restrictions, a so-called Plan C, for example, then he would have to rely on those votes from the opposition, which gives the opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer, that power to determine which parts of those restrictions would go through the House of Commons. And if Boris Johnson did decide to do that, indeed he would face even more scrutiny, even more resistance from his own MPs. So a tricky couple of weeks ahead for the Prime Minister still.
So Benji, just how significant is this prospect of further measures potentially being introduced? Of course, you know, last year in the United Kingdom, many people had to spend Christmases apart and we're moving into that sort of festive period again. But as COVID cases continue to rise, do you think that there is a prospect of further restrictions being introduced?
Look, Laura, I think the consensus is that, amongst scientists at least, that this Omicron variant can't just be stopped in its tracks by even shutting down the whole country. This is all about trying to prevent the country's National Health Service from essentially being overwhelmed. Now, the good news is, from preliminary studies and sort of anecdotal evidence, is that this variant seems more mild than other versions. In addition to that, the UK has a significant amount of immunity, either vaccine-induced or infection-induced. About 35% of the population have already received that booster vaccine too. The concern, however, remains that if enough people get coronavirus during this wave that is predicted to come, then the most vulnerable would still require hospital care, and that could overwhelm the system. Alternatively, shutting down too much too comprehensively might be putting off and postponing any deaths or illnesses, and that would not be a constructive option either. So the Prime Minister has a difficult road ahead here, and he has to deliberate whether restrictions are the right thing to do. He has not ruled them out, but equally the Prime Minister will be reluctant to put in place any further lockdown restrictions. And there's one other thing to consider on top of everything that we've discussed, which is, of course, in the context of last night's defeat, whether he would even be able to pass any further restrictions in the House of Commons, given the opposition from his own MPs.